Here we go. Good to see you all. Uh, Today is July 5th. Tomorrow is the day that's associated with the Dalai Lama's birthday, although he probably most likely was not born on July 6th. That was the day that was chosen. So there will be some various celebrations. Venerable Shanka is going to be doing a practice uh, tomorrow uh, that Lama Zopa Rinpoche had arranged in celebration of the Dalai Lama's birthdays. So he obviously that he composed that some years ago. He's going to be doing that tomorrow. So if you'd like to participate in that, Shanka will put a link to that up. Also, who mentioned there's another thing going on? Oh, Diana mentioned that at Kurukula Center.
I'll post it.
Go on. At Kurukula Center, there will be also a ceremony tomorrow in honor of His Holiness's birthday.
And you can attend online.
That's the special thing, yeah. Okay, so that's the center in Medford, the suburb of Boston. I think that's the address, right, Diana? Medford? Okay.
Yes.
So let's try to set a motivation. Hi, Mikhail. Let's try to set a motivation for our class. Sangye churang suki chodam la jangchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunye ipe sogna ki rola penche sangye upasho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye churang soki chognam la changchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupa sho. So although we do meditation in a while, a few minutes, to set a motivation, this itself is often uh, sufficient beforehand, taking refuge, generating bodhicitta. So try to think that through the collections of merit and wisdom that I will accumulate by listening to the Dharma, contemplating and meditating on it, may I become a Buddha as a result of that. And the purpose of that is to be able to lead sentient beings out of suffering into that enlightenment. Then by offering this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm. As a result of that, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. And request to turn the wheel of Dharma, O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom. Please send down a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, thank you. So we will do a little meditation. Relax your body and mind. Just recognize your breathing. I sometimes like to start with trying to notice my heartbeat, which I can occasionally. So in other words, your breathing is going to be like your heart. You're not going to try to control your breathing. This is not a pranayama meditation where you're controlling the breathing. Once you recognize the respiration, place your mindfulness upon it to the exclusion of all other thoughts. certainly not dwelling on other thoughts. So one part of your mind, like an inspector watching your consciousness, recognizing if you are dwelling on something, and the transient thoughts that may come up, just don't pay attention to them. Don't get allured into following them. If you're successful in that, when I say that, that means when you do this on your own, you should continue doing the breathing until you're successful in calming the mind a bit. Now turn your attention to, and your mindfulness to the mental consciousness. Within which we think, plan, remember, judge. Letting go of the contents, of grasping to the contents, as we did in when watching the breathing. Try to perceive the clarity of the mind behind the thoughts, the space-like nature of the mind. Space-like, like space, not space, but space-like, in that it doesn't hinder the arisal, the emergence of mental events, nor it doesn't hinder the reabsorption of those events back into the consciousness, like the evaporation of a white cloud on a sunny day on the 5th of July. Recognizing the significance of this clear light nature of the mind, conventional clear light nature of the mind, that it implicates the fact that we can develop all of the qualities that we admire, or even if we don't admire them now, as we learn about them and learn to admire them and develop, the understanding that we can develop them this lifetime. It's a matter of training, familiarity, and we can eliminate all that behavioral junk that we have that others find irritating, even if we don't. But when we start get more attuned to the Dharma, we can realize, I'm too proud, I'm too stingy, I'm too arrogant, I'm too attached, I'm needy, I'm angry, I'm irritable. We can get rid of those in stages through our own practice, simply by not following them at first, later applying antidotes to them when we learn the antidotes. Temporal antidotes first, and then eventually the ultimate antidote of selflessness of persons and phenomena, emptiness, the universal antidote. we can have such thoughts as this as a result of this auspicious moment that we have encountered. The Buddha called an auspicious moment of life, of leisure and endowment. We're free of, if I complain about the suffering of my legs, nothing like the suffering of the mildest hell realm. Nothing like the suffering of the pretas, bursting bellies, trying to, if they have the fortune to find one drop of water, it explodes in their throat and causes their stomach to extend and fire to come out of their mouths. We have this life of leisure and endowment that we've created the causes for in the past. And it would be wonderful if we could continue creating the causes for future human rebirths through the practice of morality, mainly charity and the other perfections, but especially a special motivation or prayer that's implicit in our bodhicitta motivation. Think I can use this life to go beyond the Sunday afternoon football watching culture, meat and potatoes culture, sex and rock and roll culture, the here and now culture. I can aim for the goal of escaping from cyclic existence, or as the Buddha preferred for those of intelligence, his intelligent disciples, to aim for enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, a goal that doesn't come naturally, but has to be cultivated, the mind of bodhicitta. First developing a heartwarming feeling toward all sentient beings, even when they're naughty, even when they're evil, even when they're repulsive. All equally kind, not sympathizing with our relatives and friends and leaving out others. Starting from that, warming that up and understanding their sufferings as we understand our own sufferings within cyclic existence. And developing compassion for them, wanting them, wishing that they be free from suffering, and great compassion where we take the responsibility. I myself will bring about the alleviation of their suffering, and great love. May I endow them with immutable happiness, with unchanging happiness that doesn't fluctuate according to their, samsaric karma, the bliss of nirvana or enlightenment. To achieve that state, we have to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom. Merit acting as the cooperative cause of our developing the form bodies that can benefit sentient beings. So in a sense, the method side, practicing various deeds within the world, creating merit, virtuous karma, for the sake of sentient beings, and for our own sake, and eventually for the sake of sentient beings, accumulating the collection of wisdom, meditating on emptiness, selflessness, in order to achieve the Dharmakaya, which is the supreme end, the supreme optimal state of the one's own aim. When we talk about the aim of others, we achieve the two form bodies, the Rupakaya bodies of Dharmakaya, of Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya, for the welfare of others, to be able to lead them, to commune with them, and we achieve the Dharmakaya. So that blissful, everlasting, blissful state from which we can activate the two other form bodies for the welfare of sentient beings. So to accumulate those two, one of the special methods is to practice the teachings, to listen, contemplate, and meditate on the Buddha's Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, which we're going to do this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. I think I'm going to participate. I'm going to listen carefully without a mind that's, old mind, without an old mind, sort of like a young mind, being like a child, listening as though you're hearing it for the first time, contemplating, that is, trying to weigh the meaning behind the words, and meditating when you've obtained a clear understanding of something. I'm going to participate, to listen, contemplate, and meditate on the subject of the illumination of the intention, the text by Lama Tsongkhapa, in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all mother sentient beings. Okay. Thank you very much. Good to see you. So, how are we doing? Anyone have a Dharma question? Hi, Anna. Good to see you. So today is July 5th. Tomorrow is recognizes the Dalai Lama's birthday. So there are links up, or there will be links up in the chat for various places you can go tomorrow if you'd like to participate in various rituals to celebrate and pray for also for the long life of the Dalai Lama. Yeah. So I wanted to mention a story that I've told before. I think some of you may have heard several times over the years. When I was at Manjushri Institute in England in the 1980s, I think it was in the 1980s, yeah, something like that. There was a family that had invited me to dinner at their place. I can't remember if it was a house or apartment. I think it was the brother of Neil, Venerable Neil. Well, he was Venerable Neil at the time, who became the head of Geshe Kelsang's, so the head teacher at one point until he disrobed. I think it was his brother and the brother's wife and children. And the wife had prepared this incredibly delicious organic meal. Okay, so in the kitchen, I could check out the pots, and everything was done to, as an offering, in a sense, but it was very, very nutritious and good tasting. It wasn't just nutritious, like someone invites you to have a wheatgrass milkshake or something like that. And so Mom was calling the boys, the two sons. They were I don't know, 4 and 5, 5 and 6, 6 or 7. I can't remember, something around that, and maybe closer to the lower range. But they were screaming. Mom was trying to pull them this way to the dinner. They're pulling, trying to go the other way because they had seen underneath the sofa uh, a little candy. I think in England at the time they called them chiclets. Do they still say that? Do you know what chiclets? I remember in the United States used to be a kind of gum, but these kind of candies. Shankar, is it you've heard that? Like,
Yes, and they were common in India when I was growing up, so I remember having them all the time.
okay, so chiclet, yeah, it's Indian vernacular also. So it was in the dust underneath the sofa. It wasn't in the plastic wrapper any longer. It was something that they had in their mouth and had dropped or something. And they were insistent on trying to get that while mom's trying to pull them to this wholesome, delicious meal. And it occurred to me that this is exactly the situation that the Arya beings, the Buddhas, perceive us. We're obsessed with this icky picky, teeny weeny happiness, contaminated, filled with dust underneath the sofa. You know, for us, to we're obsessed with that and oblivious of the great meal that the nutritious meal of the teachings that the Buddha and the Aryas have prepared for us. Um, so I thought I would share that again with you when we talk about the hindrances to the practice and the hindrances to, let's say, to shamatha. Recently, um, Doris unearthed discovered that at Land of Medicine Buddha, they've been putting on some on their website now teachings that had not been up for a long time. There was a series of teachings on the experiential teachings by Ribu Rinpoche on concentration and wisdom mainly from the liberation in the palm of your hand, but also his own experiences. And I had the honor of leading discussion groups for most of those sessions. So those are up. And one of the things that Rinpoche was just in the beginning teachings on calm abiding, you can find those teachings up. Is that right, Doris, on the Land of Medicine Buddha site?
They are on Land of Medicine Buddha's YouTube channel, but I'm in the process of getting them ready to load onto your channel.
Right. So eventually they'll be on Gelong Tripton Sultrum YouTube channel. But one of the things that's mentioned that when you're trying to do retreat, to develop single pointed concentration, one of the greatest hindrances is attachment and desires. You need to have few desires. You need to be satisfied so that your mind is not always thinking of that chiclet underneath the sofa in the dust, in the hairs underneath the sofa. And that you can concentrate continually, even between sessions when you're doing Shine meditation, tranquil abiding meditation, even between sessions, always keeping that in the background, even when you're not concentrating on it in formal meditation, still keeping that, being mindful of your meditation object. So I just wanted to share that with you as an additional motivation before our class today. Okay, so how are we doing? Anyone have any questions from our previous classes? So, Richard, what are we studying right now, right at this present time?
Unless I'm mistaken, we're studying the foundation consciousness, and how it is, let's see, how it is to be, how it's refuted by the Prasangika and asserted by the Yogacara.
Yeah, yeah. The terminology is accepted by Prasangika. So the generally, we're still talking about the emptiness of phenomena, right? We haven't gotten to the emptiness of the person yet, to the selflessness of persons. That will be a great section coming up. And we talked about the Nagarjuna's first stanza in his fundamental wisdom, that phenomena are not, so that impermanent phenomena are not produced from themselves, from others, from both self and others, or without causes. And we're still on the section of refuting the refutation of generation from other. And so from our understanding, that means an other which is an inherently existent other. So as an aside to that, Chandrakirti and Lama Khapa following him, we've gotten to the point of, let's see, this section is called The Actual Meaning of the Words That Eliminate Contradiction with the Scriptures. So that's the end of the section. We're at the end of that section in the next section in our text. And for those who don't have the place in your text, this is in Jimpa's text, page 292, and in the FPMT text, page 163. So this is the so this, we're starting from a sentence that says, in quotes, "For what kind of trainees then did the Buddha teach foundation consciousness?" So who did he teach alaya vijnana to? And in response, the root text reads, "Foundation consciousness, alaya vijnana, exists." This is in quotes. These are supposedly various statements that the Buddha made. Persons exist. These aggregates alone exist. Such teachings were given for those who cannot understand the most profound truth. So the Buddha taught provisionally, as we've mentioned many times, kind of like as a stairway to lead to higher understanding for those who were caught at a certain point. They'd reached a certain level and they were caught there, maybe seeing the chiclet of some particular tenet that made sense, and they couldn't go any further for the time being. So the Buddha taught certain things for them. So in commentary to that, after verse 643, it says in Jimpa's translation, in regard to teaching such as teaching that the Buddha gave, foundation consciousness exists, the Buddha said in certain sutras. Another teaching, persons exist as a substantial reality, or they substantially exist, sort of implied by that. The Buddha said for certain disciples, another statement, these aggregates alone exist, quote unquote, in that they possess true existence. Remember when we were talking about the Heart Sutra, when we said, when Shariputra was interrogating Avalokiteshvara and asking, interrogating, is that okay to say? That sounds a little dramatic, right? He was asking Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how the Bodhisattvas meditate on the perfection of wisdom, even though Shariputra was considered to be the best, the foremost of the Buddha's disciples on wisdom from the Theravada tradition, from the Hinayana. And Avalokiteshvara said, the Bodhisattvas meditate on the aggregates also as being empty of inherent existence. So that's sort of relevant here when I said the aggregates alone exist. So from some Hinayana point of view, the person doesn't exist substantially. It's just imputedly existent, but the aggregates upon which the person is imputed, they exist. So these are all of these provisional teachings that the Buddha gave. Such teachings were, as explained above, given for the sake of those trainees who, for the time being, cannot understand or realize the meaning of the most profound truth. Some trainees have been habituated to extreme views over long periods, eons, millions of eons, maybe longer, and remain incapable of engaging in the profound reality. So even though that's the case, even though they've been habituated with these for this long period of time, the Buddha knows how to lead them sequentially into, the higher understandings. So I'll just read a little bit of what Geshe Sopa said on July 11th, 2003. Yeah, that's almost 22 years ago. Okay. The person is substantially existent, or just merely these aggregates exist. That means between the person and the base of the person, the aggregates alone exist. That is to say that the person doesn't substantially exist. Remember when we talk about in the Hinayana tradition, the person is empty of being, self-supporting, substantially existent. So they're not substantially existent, but the aggregates exist. The base of the aggregates are truly existent, substantially existent, and on that basis, the person is imputedly existent. Sometimes the Buddha taught like that to the Vaibhashika, to people who were suitable to hear the Vaibhashika teachings, Hinayana disciples and so forth. Okay, just as an aside. Okay, so the text continues. For example, the precious garland. Suvash, who wrote the precious garland? Do you know? Is that a text? Do you know?
Nagarjuna.
Nagarjuna wrote the precious garland. It's one of the texts that we've encountered many, many times that Chandrakirti has taken quotes from in his introduction to the Middle Way, many times to augment the fundamental wisdom teachings that Nagarjuna gave in that one text on fundamental wisdom, which is almost just about emptiness most of the time, right? So he's augmented that on the methods side with quotations from the Precious Garland by the same author, by Nagarjuna. So such statements as, I do not exist, I will not be, mine do not exist. So that means things that are mine do not exist. They will not be. Thus the childish come to be terrified. Does that make sense? This is the worries that people have when encountering emptiness or selflessness. Jeffrey Hopkins' translation, in his own translation of the Rinchen Tengwa, what is that, Ratnavali? Is that right, Paul? Right. His translation, this is verse 26. So Jeffrey's translated that this way. I am not, I will not be, I have not, I will not have. That frightens all the childish. And then there's a fourth line that was not translated here. This is just 3 lines of that stanza 26. The last line says, that frightens the childish, but extinguishes his fear in the wise. So that means understanding of emptiness to those who are childish is something that is a cause of fear. But for the wise, who are more understanding, it extinguishes their fear. Venerable, what do you think, Venerable Shanga?
Oh, just totally unrelated, Venerable. I've
Okay.
got well, I'm just mentioning that if you see my eyes closed, it's because I've got this horrible headache today. So I'm listening to you, but but I'm just here, like taking notes.
Okay,
And so,
good. Thank you for
I'm
that.
not sleeping, is what I'm trying to say. Is if you,
Okay, and I applaud your not going offline and lying down and bearing with
well,
this.
then I wouldn't be listening.
Okay, so in commentary to that, Triptych Rinpoche's translation continues, Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary. So when the ultimate nature is first taught, right, when emptiness is first taught to some may become terrified and regard the Buddhist teachings as akin to an abyss, as like an abyss. You know what an abyss is? It's what is that? It's some kind of horror movies talking about the abyss or something like that. So way, way down, inescapable sort of thing. Sort of like in the mountains in Tibet, if you were to fall down the cliff, even though you didn't die, you're at the bottom, you can't get out, right? So some may become terrified and regard the Buddhist teachings as akin to an abyss, that I don't exist, those things that are mine don't exist. What are you talking about? In doing so, those disciples, they will turn away from the teaching and will not enter it. So if the Buddha were oblivious of their states of mind, that would be terrible because they wouldn't enter it. The teaching will then serve no great purpose. On the other hand, by not teaching the profound final truth right at the beginning, but teaching foundation consciousness, for example, or the true existence of the aggregates and so forth, the teachings instead cleanses trainees of their heterodox standpoints. What does that mean, heterodox? Diana?
Kind of coming from many
Non-conforming.
orthodoxies.
Yeah, okay. I asked Diana. Diana said what?
Coming from multiple orthodoxies, multiple ways of strictly saying what is true.
Okay, but not conforming with our correct view, I guess. The teaching instead cleanses trainees of their heterodox standpoints, other points of view, and leads them toward greater objectives. In the future, they will come to comprehend the meaning of the scriptures excellently and will relinquish their belief in the existence of foundation consciousness eventually, and the true existence of the aggregates and so forth. They'll understand as a result of these provisional teachings that the aggregates exist, that foundation consciousness, alaya vijnana exists. They can practice, and when they understand the scriptures as a result of that, they can get rid of those ideas and go further. It's like that example of ascending a ladder or a staircase in understanding higher, more and more precise tenets. Therefore, there can be only merit for teaching such things. And for the Buddha to teach these is not a fault. Make sense? Pretty simple, right? Okay. So understanding this to be the proper sequence of the teachings, proper sequence means, well, for the childish sequence, I guess, you can teach things to those people who are wise or who have, let's say, just from the beginning, they have some innate wisdom. Remember when we talked about what innate means? Innate afflictions and so forth means afflictions that are not dependent upon hearing something now or thinking about it now. It's some imprints of the afflictions from previous lives. We also have innate wisdom. If we have innate wisdom, the Buddha can present the the subject of emptiness, ultimate truth, right from the very beginning. So we're talking about proper sequence. We're talking about, you have to take that into mind also. Understanding this to be the proper sequence of the teachings, the 400 stanzas, the text by Arya Deva, says, in whatever teaching one delights in, one should partake in it in this first. Or you could say, one should partake first in whatever teaching one delights in. He who might come to be damaged is in no way a vessel of that teaching. A little bit, not completely clear, but I think in the translation by Ruth Sonam, there's a translation of the 400 stanzas by Ruth Sonam, and that were sort of clarified by Geshe Rinchen Sonam. Is that right? Rinchen Sonam? Sonam Rinchen. She translated, one should analyze beforehand this and that someone enjoys. The disinclined are not vessels of the highest Dharma in any way. How did Venerable Joan translate? Someone liking something should first enjoy this and that. The disinclined are not at all vessels of the Supreme Dharma. Okay, various translations of that. So what is this talking about? The commentary says, now those who need to be taught that there is a foundation consciousness that is separate from the sixfold collection of consciousnesses. Remember, the sixfolds is the usual, if you add two more, the afflicted and the alaya vijnana, it becomes 8. So for those who need to be taught that there is an alaya vijnana, an 8th consciousness that is separate from the 6 other consciousness, must also be taught to reject external reality. Why is that, Stephen? If you accept alaya vijnana, it's implying you have to accept that there's no external reality. How does that follow? Is that generally the case? If you accept alaya vijnana, you have to accept there's no external reality?
Yeah, because alaya vijnana posits a karmic seed where the subject mind is no different from is not substantially different from the object that is perceived by it. So they're of the same nature, so there can't be an external reality.
Right, they're one entity. And so the apparent externality of the world is just an illusion, that there is no external reality separate from the mind. So good explanation, I think. So here it says, those who need to be taught that there's a foundation consciousness. So if for some other reason they need to hear about a foundation consciousness, that implies they have to be taught also to reject external reality. They are, continuing, they are therefore suitable vessels for teaching suchness only in terms of the emptiness of a substantial subject-object duality. Okay, so what is that? That's talking about subject-object. So when the seed on the alaya vijnana ripens into a subject, that is a consciousness that is perceiving something, and its object that appears to be external, that they are actually they're actually empty of being existing the way that they appear as a duality like that. They are therefore suitable vessels for teaching suchness only to the extent that the emptiness of, we're talking about the emptiness of a substantial subject-object duality. So that meaning of emptiness in the Chittamatra system. Making sense? Anna, making sense? Yeah, okay. Okay, so pretty easy so far. Since they do not know how to posit a causal relation between karma and its effects without embracing a consciousness characterized in the above terms, they are referred to as, quote, those who cannot understand the most profound truth. So why would the Buddha, when it said those who need to be taught there is a foundation consciousness, why were they taught that? In one sense, because they needed to understand that there was something that continued from life to life, and even when you're asleep and so forth, that was the repository of karmic imprints. They were nowhere ready to understand the disintegratedness was a functioning thing, and that when a karma finished, it didn't need to have a repository, or from the Prasangika point of view also, that they could be imprinted on the temporarily on the gross mental consciousness, and more eternally on a subtle mental consciousness. Okay, you following so far, Don? Making sense? Okay. So then the next outline comes. The question of whether a foundation consciousness separate from mental consciousness has been taught. Okay, so in the Tibetan text, it just says Nipa. So this is the second outline of some other sub-outline. So there, yeah, there's, you might think, well, did the Buddha actually teach foundation consciousness? And here the commentary says, many scriptures, such as the 100,000 lines of the perfection of wisdom, the great, the big 3-volume in Tibetan text, I think, is it 3 volumes, Paul, or more?
The 100,000, I think it's like 8 or 10 volumes.
Oh, okay, right. 8,000 is just 1 volume. So judging by that, it would have to be 8 or 10, right? If 1 volume is 8,000 verses, right? So many scriptures, such as the 100,000 line perfection of wisdom, mention the 6-fold collection of consciousness when listing classes of consciousness. So that's sort of mainline, the perfection of wisdom sutras. It doesn't generally, teach the Yogacara view, the Chittamatra view. Thus, many sutras do not speak of more than this 6-fold collection. So, as a result, you could say that there are 2 categories of scriptures. Those that posit foundation consciousness, alaya vijnana, those that state it as a fact, and those that do not, like the Prajnaparamita sutras and so forth. In the same vein, in the same way, when revered Maitreya expounds the meaning of these scriptures in his differentiation of the middle and extremes, what's that? Madhyanta Vibhagna, right? Madhyanta, Madhya is middle, Anta means extreme, Madhyanta Vibhagna means analysis of that, or differentiation of that. So that's the first text that Lama Yeshe taught us at Kopan on emptiness. So for many years, all we got was Lan Rim. Every time, the next Lan Rim course, people would say, Lama, could you teach emptiness? Until you understand the Lan Rim, there's no, until you have this basis, it's not going to be much benefit. So finally, one course, when was it? I don't know, then 8th or 9th, 10th course at Kopan, Lama was going to teach Utanamche. That's the Tibetan. U is middle. Ta means extreme. Namche means differentiation or analysis. And it became apparent, this is something else I wanted to mention to our class. All of the teachings that we had received during the Lan Rim teachings although they weren't couched in the language of emptiness, they were all explaining about emptiness. It was almost as though, you know, when you heard about emptiness and its explanation, so Udanamshe is, or the Madhyanta Vibhagna, differentiation of the middle of extremes, mainly talking about which point of view. Does anyone know? Paul, do you know?
Madhyanta Vibhaga? Predominantly Chittamatra, I thought.
Mainly Chittamatra, right?
Mhm.
So even though this mainly Chittamatra is talking about emptiness in a new way, that there's some kind of emptiness, it's almost as though when we heard these teachings, Lama was always teaching that in these very simple words and his actions in everyday life from the beginning. You know, we may, you know, we may think, oh, these other teachings we received, that was just, you know, trivial and so forth, but who's always talking, always teaching about emptiness. Okay, so in the same vein then, when the revered Maitreya, when the venerable Maitreya expounds the meaning of these scriptures in his differentiation of the middle of extremes, this is Chittamatra text, ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, so that's the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, what point of view is that generally? Does anyone know? Do you know, Mikhail? Mahayana Sutra Alamkara?
But aren't these three texts exposing, asserting the foundation consciousness?
Yeah, they will.
So there must be Chittamatra, no?
Right. Well,
Or
there
maybe the
are some
Tantrika.
Tantrika Madhyamikas who also teach foundation consciousness. No, or no?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So, yeah.
Seems like, yeah. So anyway, ornament of Mahayana Sutras and the differentiation of phenomena and their ultimate nature. In those three texts, the five texts of Maitreya, he presents the standpoint that accepts foundation consciousness and the absence of external reality. So in three of those five texts by Maitreya, the famous five texts, he's presenting an acceptance of alaya vijnana, and as a result of that, the absence of external reality. In contrast, in two of the other of those five texts, the ornament of realizations, what's that? Abhisamaya Lamkara, right? Which some of you studied. I think Venerable Sanghi Khandro taught some chapters of that. And in the sublime continuum, the Uttara Tantra, Maitreya presents the standpoint that does not posit alaya vijnana, does not posit foundation consciousness, and does not reject external reality. So it's not that Maitreya was mixed up, or that a Sangha who wrote the commentaries to those texts. Remember, a Sangha went to Tushita's heaven and brought these texts back, these five texts. That's what the Mahayana believes, and he wrote commentaries on them. And so he's credited in writing the commentaries on the Chittamatra. He's credited as being the founder of the Chittamatra in some sense, you know, in the human realm, like Nagarjuna is considered to be the opener of the way of the Madhyamaka. The great master Asanga too, he also did not interpret the intention of Uttara Tantra, sublime continuum, from the Chittamatra standpoint at all. Rather, he expounded the text from the Madhyamaka perspective. Furthermore, in his commentary on the sublime continuum, on the Uttara Tantra, Asanga explains in the following manner the very scriptural proof cited from the Abhidharma in his summary of the great vehicle to establish the existence of foundation consciousness. Okay, so a long sentence here. So explains in the following. So that's going to be the next stanza here, or the next little explanation. In the following manner, the very scriptural proof cited from the Abhidharma in his summary of the great vehicle. So what's the summary of the great vehicle? Does anyone know? Paul, do you know?
The Mahayana Samuchaya. The Tekchen Kundu, I think.
Right? Something like that. Is it Samuchaya or, yeah.
Or Samgraha, maybe? Mahayana Samgraha, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So that was another text that Asanga wrote, and in that he quotes the Abhidharma. So what is this referring to? So here's first of all, Asanga explains the following manner. So this is from the Mahayana Samgraha. The Buddha said that although the Tathagata element that constitutes an essence is present in sentient beings, they do not recognize it. Okay, how did we suddenly get to Tathagata, or Tathagata if you want, Tathagata element? How did we get from alaya vijnana to that? What's going on here? Anyone know? Suvansh, have you researched this?
Well, Venerable George, I mean, it seems to me that here the Buddha is talking about the Tathagata element, which is Buddha nature. So he's not talking about the alaya vijnana. He's proposing to that audience the Tathagata element. Therefore, this is in contrast, right? We've had some cases where the Buddha is teaching only 6 consciousnesses, some cases where he's teaching the alaya vijnana, and here he's teaching the Tathagata element.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so it says, the Buddha said, so this is Asanga's words apparently. The Buddha said that although the Tathagata element, that's the Deshin Shekpa Kam, that's often, is sort of synonymous with Deshin Shekpa Ningpo. Is that right, Paul? And, sort of like the, you could say Buddha nature. In essence, right? When we talk in our beginning meditation, when we talk about the conventional Buddha nature and the ultimate Buddha nature, mainly we've always been meditating on up till now on the conventional Buddha nature, the fact that the mind offers no resistance, is sort of space-like with regard to the content. The ultimate Buddha nature, or the Tathagata element, refers to the emptiness of the mind. Okay, so the Buddha said that although the Tathagata element, the emptiness of mind, that constitutes an essence, is present in sentient beings, but they do not recognize it, right? That our minds are empty of inherent existence, but we are oblivious of that. For example, so now he's quoting from the Abhidharma, and that quote is, "This element, since beginningless time, is the locus of all phenomena due to its presence in all migrators, due to its presence, comma, all migrations as well as nirvana are attained." So the note there, 547, is this is a quotation from the Uttara Tantra Vakya. That's the commentary. So Uttara Tantra was the text that Maitreya brought back from Tushita Heaven. The Vakya was his own commentary on that, which is kind of hard to read. So there were the Tibetans wrote many commentaries on that. Preference trying to read Asanga's text, which they found difficult. So let's go back. What was this saying? This was saying, Asanga explains in the following manner the very scriptural proof cited in the Abhidharma, cited from the Abhidharma in his summary of the great vehicle to establish the existence of foundation consciousness. Where is the Abhidharma mentioned here? How does Abhidharma come into this?
I think the four lines, last four lines are from
Yes.
the Abhidharma.
So Thupten Jinpa's note 547
But
says,
the whole is from the
yeah, so the quotation is found in Uttara Tantra, but it is from the Abhidharma point of view. It's not from the Abhidharma Kosha, is it? So it's not clear to us right now. Okay. Okay. So anyway, let's continue. This verse is cited as a scriptural authority to establish the presence in all sentient beings of the ultimate reality that is Buddha nature. Such an approach accords with our master Chandrakirti, who explains emptiness to be the underlying intended meaning of the teaching of foundation consciousness. Okay, here we make the connection between what we were just talking about before, alaya vijnana, right? Foundation consciousness. Then suddenly it was talking about the Tathagata element or Buddha nature. What's the relationship? Because the Tathagata element, Deshin Shekpa Kam, or Deshin Shekpa Ningbo, Tathagata essence, or Buddha nature, all of these are referring to the emptiness of the mind. And Chandrakirti is explained and is in the process of explaining that when the Buddha taught alaya vijnana, he was referring to emptiness. His intention of talking about alaya vijnana was a way of couching emptiness in other terms. So read the commentary again. Jinpa says, such an approach accords with our master Chandrakirti, who explains emptiness to be the underlying intended meaning of the teaching of foundation consciousness. So how does that go? So anyway, we'll see more. So the text continues. So Asanga too understands that a foundation consciousness, separate from the sixfold collection of consciousness, is that right? Can you say sixfold collection of consciousness, or you have to say sixfold collection of consciousnesses? Okay, I leave that for the grammarians among you. So Asanga too understands that a foundation consciousness separate from the sixfold collection of consciousness is something taught by the Buddha for the sake of certain trainees and for a specific purpose. Okay. Some of them needed it because they needed a place for the repository of karmic seeds. So then there's a question. In that case, you could ask, how does one interpret the following in the commentary on Awakening Mind, where it says that foundation consciousness sustains existence? So, Mikhail, do you know the commentary on Awakening Mind? Zhangshub, what's it called?
Yeah, His Holiness taught this to us in Strasbourg when he came last time he came to France.
Okay,
I
good.
think that's Nagarjuna's text, right?
Did you attend?
Yeah.
Nice, okay. So this is a text attributed to Nagarjuna. Some people say, no, Nagarjuna didn't write this one. But general consensus but among Tibetan Buddhists, scholars, is that it definitely is Nagarjuna's text. And it's called Jangshub Semdel in Tibetan. What is it? Bodhicitta Avarana? Something
Vivarana.
Vivarana. So this is so let's read these three verses here. I'm not sure. Do they come in succession? Yeah, they're verses 32, 30, 33, 34, and 35. from this text by Nagarjuna talking about the commentary on Bodhicitta. When close to a lodestone, an iron object swiftly moves forward. It possesses no mind of its own, yet appears as if it does. Nadine, do you know what a lodestone is? What is lodestone?
I think it's probably a magnet which draws metal.
Yeah, so lodestone, certain stones were found in nature to be magnetized. And so they were, before people could make magnets, that was the only kind of magnets they had, lodestone. So it's talking about natural magnet. What is it called in Tibetan? Kablen. What does kablen mean? Do you know, Venerable Shankar, what kablen means?
I know zero Tibetan, so
Oh, okay. No, you know your name. You know your name. Mikhail, what does kablen mean? Do you know?
In the dictionary, it's just magnet. Yeah, magnetic
Oh.
stone.
Paul, what does kablen mean?
I don't know the etymology of that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So len means to take or to,
Was it Kaplen or Kaplong?
Kaplen.
Ah, okay.
Khablen.
And cap is a needle.
Say again.
Oh, yeah.
Cap is a needle.
Yeah, right. There you go. So that's how the Tibetans etymology. So for them, a magnet is something that draws a needle. Okay, so that's just their own etymology of it, but it's basically talking about lodestone. So that first verse in José Cabazon's text, Dose of Emptiness, in the section talking about a refutation of Alaya Vijnana, the same quotation comes up. So he translates it there. The closer it gets to a magnet, the quicker will a compass spin. And even though it has no mind, it seems as though it possesses a mind. Okay, so they're translating it a little bit differently. In the Tibetan, it says, Chakni Nirdu Yongsu Kor. Yongsu Kor sounds like it's revolving, which accords with Jose's translation better. I don't know where Jimpa got his translation there about moves forward. Yongsu Kor, Korwa means to turn, like the turning of the wheel and so forth. So it does, like if you bring a lodestone or a magnet close to something like a needle or another piece of metal, that thing will begin to move, maybe begins to turn because one side of it's closer to the magnet than the other. So it's going to be turning. But anyway, the meaning is the same. When close to a lodestone, when you get close to a lodestone or a magnet, an iron object will move forward or turn as a result of that, right? Although it possesses no mind of its own, it appears as though it does. Okay, that's the first point. So this is an analogy. Likewise, Alaya Vijnana, foundation consciousness, also appears to be real. Okay, so this is talking about an analogy. The metal object appeared to have mind because it moved, right? Or the magnet appeared to have mind. So here is saying foundation consciousness appears to be real, although it's false. It moves to and fro in this way and sustains the three realms of existence. That's generally how the Tibetans translate when it says sustains the three realms of existence. Jose translates that way, that verse. Likewise, foundation consciousness though untrue, appears as if it were true. When there is a fluctuation and movement, then it takes up existence. Sipa Zimpa. So there, again, there's different interpretations of this. What is that getting at? Does anyone looked at that verse? Likewise, foundation consciousness appears to be real, although it's false. It moves to and fro in this way and sustains the three realms of existence. That doesn't resonate with me very much. Jose's translation, when there is fluctuation in movement, then it takes up existence. I think the implication is talking about transmigration, right? From the Chittamatra point of view, what's the function of alaya vijnana at the time of death? Do you know, Luis? What were we saying? You're muted.
It's where the seed throwing you to the next life. Well, ripens alaya vijnana at death.
Yeah, but also it's that which continues when you're asleep, between lives and so forth. They posit that as that continuation. So I think from my point of view, Jose's translation makes more sense. When there is fluctuation and movement, then it takes up existence, and existence, sipa, that means that, a rebirth and so forth. Then the third stanza says, just as the ocean and the trees move about though they possess no mind, right? So the waves on the ocean, the tides, not only the waves, the tides, it looks like although it has no mind, it moves about, right? And the trees, you could take it in two ways. Trees seem to move because of the wind, or you could say the driftwood in the ocean or in the streams seems to move. There are two interpretations there. Likewise, foundational consciousness, alaya vijnana, moves about in dependence upon the body. So Jimpa's note 548 there is just quoting these verses 33 to 35 in the Bodhicitta Vivarana. Okay, so Jose translates that last one, just as the ocean and wood, so he doesn't, so that he's not taking so much of the trees, Xing, they are tossed about by the wind in the same way the foundation consciousness wavers based on the body. Okay, not completely clear there. Okay, so we're gonna just let me just read a little bit more. We'll take a break in case you're getting, you need to get some caffeine, chocolate covered coffee beans or something. So let me just read a little bit further. So in reply to this, so this was quoted by someone who seems to say that they think that this text by Nagarjuna seems to be supporting alaya vijnana. Remember that last line where it said, likewise, foundation consciousness moves about in dependence upon the body. So in reply to that, we're correcting them because Nagarjuna's Jangshub Semdel, this text on Bodhicitta, commentary on Bodhicitta, is not supporting foundation consciousness. It is refuting it. So the reply says, it is shown earlier in the commentary on Awakening Mind. I'm not sure where Jimpa's, where that state, why he's translating it that way. I don't know. Anyway, it is shown earlier in the commentary on the Awakening Mind how the teaching of mind only, Chittamatra, according to which the rejection of an external reality independent from the mind, and the mind alone is left without negating its intrinsic existence, was taught to help the childish overcome their terror toward the teaching that everything is empty, and therefore it does not constitute the definitive truth. So Jinpa's translation of this, although the Tibetan doesn't seem to support exactly what he's saying there, he says it was shown earlier in the commentary on Bodhicitta, besides these three verses, 32, 33, 34, whatever it is, 33, 34, 35, that the Alaya Vijnana was taught to help the immature, the childish, spiritual immature, overcome their terror toward the teaching that emptiness, that everything is empty. And therefore, it's not definitive. It's just something that's provisional, that was taught for the sake of sentient beings to lead them further. He said, the teaching of mind only, according to which, this is a little bit convoluted sentence here, to my point of view, following the rejection of an external reality independent from the mind. So if you reject external reality that's independent from the mind alone is left without negating its intrinsic existence. So in other words, Chittamatra point of view, that those Chittamatrans who accept Alaya Vijnana, right? Do all Chittamatrans accept Alaya Vijnana, Stephen, do you remember?
No, they don't, Venerable George. There's the Chittamatrans who follow reasoning, who follow Dharmakirti's treatises on cognition.
Thank you for reminding us of that, yeah. So it says, according to how the teaching of mind only, from the Asanga's point of view, according to which the rejection of that external reality is rejected, that an external reality that's a different entity from the mind is rejected, but the mind that experiences these two, that experiences the subject and the object, that is inherently existent. It doesn't negate its intrinsic existence. So that's one of the characteristics of the Chittamatra. When they talk, because it's Mahayana, you might think that they accept the emptiness that we've come to understand, the emptiness of inherent existence. But for them, emptiness means something else. It means the emptiness of the lack of the object and the subject being different entities. The subject mind itself is inherently existent. Okay, so then, so that does not constitute definitive truth. That's just a provisional truth. Furthermore, the text refutes the Yogacara view, the commentary on Bodhicitta by Nagarjuna, refutes the Yogacara view that a pure state of mind possessing intrinsic existence, inherently existent pure state of mind, and attained through the transformation of the base, exists as the sphere of experience of the reflexive gnosis of the Aryas. Okay, we're going to take a break there for you to think. So just, Paul, reflexive gnosis of the Aryas. Is that a good translation of that?
Well,
Soso rangrikbe choyuldu. Soso rangriki. Is that?
well, yeah, I mean, so Rangrik. Well, Rangrik is usually the reflexive awareness or
Right.
self-cognition. So usually is individual. And gnosis, I've never liked as a trans. Is it yeshe? I'm not seeing the Tibetan here. Is it Soso Rangrikbe Juyul, within the sphere of activity of one's own individual reflexive awareness, something like that.
Yeah.
Not
So
sure where he's getting
taking-
gnosis from.
Yeah, he's sort of spreading it out. So let's take a break after I address Venerable Shanka's urgent request here.
I was just going to ask you, would you, from which page number from Dose of Emptiness were you quoting? Would you mention, or do you, if you have that?
Yeah. So that is page 322 in Jose Cabezon's. Yeah, 322.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's take a little break, and you can cogitate about what's going on. To begin the thank you. So yeah, so there's a little bit of confusion here. So the Jangshub Semdel, the commentary on Bodhicitta by Nagarjuna, is refuting Yogacara, but some people can take certain verses of it and it looks they can interpret it. Oh, he's saying that there's that alaya vijnana. What did he say here? Oh, no. Okay, so furthermore, the text refutes the Yogacara view that a pure state of mind possessing intrinsic existence, so inherently, so that they accept that there is an inherently existent mind, exists as the sphere of experience of the reflexive gnosis of the Aryas. So it's, I think maybe the word gnosis, as Paul pointed out, may have been an extrapolation by Tupten Jinpa. Anyway, when this is refuted, when alaya vijnana is refuted, when the Yogacara view is refuted, there remains the salient question: if the mind has no true existence, how can processes such as a sentient being entering this world from the previous one, so that it was what our original rebirth, when we entered into this world from a previous world, meaning a previous existence, and from and departing to the next one from the present world, going death, going to the next life. How could they function if the mind is not truly existent? Well, we've addressed that many, many times, but it has to be addressed again and again, I guess. In response to such a qualm, the text states how the iron object and tree do not have minds of their own. So whether you're talking about the branches of a tree in a river, or the tree being swayed by the wind, or the iron object that's being moved by the lodestone, they don't have minds of their own, yet they move about as if they do. In the same manner, the text says, foundation consciousness, alaya vijnana, has no true existence, and yet, so that's similar to not having mind, right? It has no true existence, and yet it is perceived with activities like leaving and entering, leaving this life, going to the next, entering this life from the previous one, as if it does possess true existence. So this text, Nagarjuna's commentary on Bodhicitta, does not indicate that the author accepts intrinsically real foundation consciousness as described in other treatises. Okay, that's one thing. So then, another qualm, if you were to think, although this text, Commentary on Awakening Mind, might not accept the foundation consciousness that exists by virtue of its intrinsic characteristic, someone's wondering, it does accept an illusion-like consciousness that is separate from the 6 classes of consciousness, a form of consciousness endowed with all the seeds of afflicted phenomena and all those of the enlightened class of phenomena. So that's just meaning all the seeds, of the when we're talking about the 108 phenomena, a certain number, 50, 53 and 55, some of the afflicted class, some of the pure class, we try to give an enumeration of all the different phenomena. That's one way of counting them in the Prajnaparamita Sutras. So this person, there's this thought that there's still a consciousness separate from the six consciousnesses that holds these seeds. And the reply is, were the text to accept this kind of foundation consciousness, I guess the implication there is that the person who's asking about this is assuming this form of consciousness that's separate from the six is the foundation consciousness. Were the text to accept this kind of foundation consciousness, it would also have to reject external reality, right? Since on that view, so the point of view of that kind of consciousness, forms, sounds, and the rest, forms means visual forms, sounds, odors, tastes, and tactile objects, they are claimed to appear merely from the maturing of propensities contained in foundation consciousness, right? They appear merely when when a propensity or seed ripens into the subject and the object. In that case, how would one understand the following from the same text? So now there's another quotation from this commentary on Bodhicitta, and this is, this is verse 39. So the other ones were, what was it, 33, 34, 35. Now jumping to verse 39, Jimpa translates, the cognizer perceives the cognizable. Without the cognizable, there is no cognition. Therefore, why do you not admit that neither object nor subject exists? And then he has in brackets, at all. So this is a little bit translated differently by different translators. I don't think, is there a commentary on the Jangchub Semdel, Paul, do you know? I mean, other than Tibetan commentaries, is there something in Tengyur?
Yeah, no, there are Tengyur. Well, the Changchub Semjel is in the Tengyur, and I think there are commentaries in there on it as well. Off the top of my head, I can't think, but I'm sure there's also Tibetan commentaries.
I've seen they're talking about Tibetan commentaries on this verse, so this is, I was assuming that wasn't in the Tengyur. Anyway, okay, so let me read what FPMT translation also is a little bit unclear. Consciousnesses realize objects of knowledge, right? You have a consciousness, it realizes what's within its sphere, the objects of knowledge, the sheja. Without objects of knowledge, without something to be known, there are no consciousness. There are no consciousnesses. So this is a basic premise of the Prasangika when we talk about consciousness, that you can't have just a consciousness alone without having an object. There are no objects that don't have a consciousness apprehending them. We could say because they have to be imputed. They only exist by imputation, right? So they only exist within the sphere of consciousness. So let me read the rest. So Venerable Joan translated, consciousnesses realize objects of knowledge. Without objects of knowledge, there are no consciousnesses. Since that is the case, do not assert. I think this is, she got incorrect. It actually says, why not assert? In Tibetan is chi. Chagigu chi sa chi means how or why. Why not assert objects of cognition and cognizers do not exist? Cabazon, Jose on page 323 translates that verse also. Phenomena are understood by consciousness. Consciousnesses, okay? That makes sense, right? were phenomena to be non-existent, so would consciousnesses. If there were no phenomena, there would be no consciousnesses of them. How is it that you reject the known, but not the knower? So he's taking, he has the interrogative there. Why is it, or how? He's saying that you're rejecting one, but not the other. Lintner, what's Lintner's first name, Paul? Christian, isn't it? Christian Lintner. Is that spelled the same as the Lintner chocolates?
I think no. I think Lintner is Lindtner.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Lindntner. And no, other way around.
Lindtner. That's how his name is.
Right.
Anyway, he's a famous translator of Mahayana Sutras, especially Nagarjuna. His translation of this verse is, the knowable is known by a knower. Without the knowable, no knowing is possible. That makes sense, right? They're all translating these different words, subject, object, in different ways. So why not accept the subject and object do not exist as such? Okay, so there's different interpretations of this verse. All of these authors have relied on other commentaries. So that's why I was wondering whether there was actual commentary in the Tengyur.
There is. It's by Smriti Jnanakirti,
Okay.
who was a Sanskrit pundit who actually lived in Tibet and translated himself into Tibetan.
Oh,
So he wrote his own commentary and then translated it himself into Tibetan.
Okay, so it should be, it's what he meant.
Yeah.
There again, unless he didn't know Tibetan well. So that'd be interesting to check. So let's read the commentary here by Lama Tsongkhapa to that first. So this was meant, what was this to say? In that case, how would one understand the following from the same text? So we did that verse that we just read. This says that insofar as their existence or non-existence is concerned, both outer objects of knowledge and inner cognitions are equal. So that's when he says, this says insofar as their existence or non-existence is concerned, both are equal. I guess that accords with Jimpa's translation, that neither object nor subject exists at all. That means they don't inherently exist or truly exist. If one does not exist, neither will the other. The text states, the text states, this standpoint is no different from the statement here in our work, in the Madhyamaka where Chandrakirti says that objects and their cognitions are exactly equal with respect to their existence or lack thereof. So you can say, on one level, you could say that the subject, the consciousness, only exists if there's an object. If there's no object, there's no consciousness. If there is an object, there is a consciousness. If there is a consciousness, there is an object, and so forth. They're equal that way, or you could also talk about it in terms of their being truly existent. As such, it is wrong to discriminate between the two in terms of their existence or non-existence on the level of either of the two truths. So just as it just said there, you could talk about it conventionally. When there is a consciousness, if the consciousness exists, it must have an object. You can't have a consciousness just by itself without knowing something. Is that possible? What about deep sleep? What about the
formless realm?
Say again?
What about the formless realm?
Oh, what about the formless realm? Yeah. Does it have an object? In the formless realm, it's not just one realm, right? There are 4 levels. Infinite consciousness, infinite space, infinite consciousness,
Nothing at all.
nothing at all, and then neither discrimination or non-discrimination, all have some kind of object. You can't have a consciousness on the just conventional level. You can't have a consciousness unless there's an object. If to say that there's an object, there has to be a consciousness that realizes it. And then on the ultimate level, because it says either of the two truths, if one of them is truly existent, the other has to be truly existent. Or if one of them is non-inherently existent, the other has to be non-inherently existent. Therefore, the existence of the consciousness with no parallel external reality is not the position of the master Nagarjuna. So that's the conclusion there. So Nagarjuna says his position is that there is no existence of a consciousness without a corresponding object, external object. So Nagarjuna's position is that external objects exist, which is contrary to the Chittamatra view of Asanga and so forth. Yeah, Sean, what are you thinking? Sean, did you have a question?
I did, but we're a little past it though.
Okay.
The part where they were talking about they were comparing the foundation consciousness to the magnet, just because they were saying just because it moves doesn't mean that it actually exists.
As it appears. Yeah, so the movement of the Alaya Vijnana is, my interpretation, as I said at the time, is that that's talking about like continuation during a lifetime and transmigration into the future lifetime. So for the followers of Asanga in the Chittamatra, that it's the Alaya Vijnana that continues from life to life and even into the Bardo state, even into the intermediate state. It's that which is analogous to the soul of the, of the Atma of the non-Buddhists.
But does that imply, it seems like that would force it into an implication that things are deterministic. Like, because the difference between a magnet and a consciousness is that the consciousness is making choices. Like when
it's just an analogy. It's just like it seems like the needle on the table has a mind of its own because it's moving, whereas it does not. That's just an illusion because of the presence of a magnet. And in the same way, you can make the analogy with the Alaya Vijnana.
But wouldn't that force it into a deterministic thing where your choices don't matter? It's just determined that this is going to happen, and that's
No.
Or even with the clairvoyance, like how would you be able to parse all the different choices that are possible to know that they're going to make all these choices to get to that space?
I'm not quite sure I understand the contradiction. Well, let's think about that for later. By the way, there won't be any discussion group this coming Monday. I was going to say we could discuss this in discussion group because I have a medical appointment. Okay, so don't worry about coming. Nadine, you have a question.
Thank you, Venerable George. In deep sleep, is it possible that consciousness touches non-duality? And if so, is there still object-subject then?
So in deep sleep, say again?
Is it possible that the consciousness touches the non-duality? Very deep sleep. Rests in
experiences those?
Yeah, kind of, a little bit.
To know non-reality, to know non-duality sounds too, you're saying touches it or something. So what happens in deep sleep? does that consciousness have an object?
I
Don,
don't know.
Don Isaacson, what do you think? You're still muted for some reason. There we go.
I think it has an object when it's dreaming, of course, but when it's in deep REM sleep, I don't know if it has a consciousness. I mean, an object.
So REM sleep is the dream state. So it's not deep REM. I'm not sure what deep. So there's a REM, and there's what in the psychological world, what do they call it?
Okay. What I'm trying to say is I think it's an object when you're dreaming, but not when we're not dreaming, maybe.
Right. When there's a dream, obviously there's an object, but when there's not, when you're in delta sleep or deep sleep, there doesn't seem to be an object. Which wouldn't that be contradictory? Would there be a consciousness there, Paul, without an object?
No, I mean, it has to have an object, even if it's only itself, you would think. Right.
But is nothing at all in the formless realm an object?
Well, nothing at all is what's appearing, but it doesn't mean the mind. Remember, the mind knows itself, right? So in that sense, it has an object.
The mind knows itself. You mean there is a...
Well, like reflexive awareness, yeah.
So you're saying that Prasangika accepts reflexive awareness?
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. There has to be a subtle object of some sort.
Yeah, there has to be a subtle object of some sort. So
even if it's just like mental factors or something.
in deep sleep, though, remember we mentioned that when we talk about mind and mental factors, consciousnesses always have objects, except in certain circumstances, at the time of the birth mind, the mind of death, when drunk or when fainting and so forth. Not all 5 omnipresent mental factors are there. So although it may have an object in theory, it doesn't. There are points when that consciousness is not a fully qualified consciousness. It's kind of like it's at the level of consciousness for most of the time, and then it sort of loses its vibrancy because the 5 omnipresent factors are not necessarily all there because of some kind of transition.
Venerable George, I seem to remember someone saying that, that at the point of death, however, right, the mind of clear light has to manifest, right? And so the question is, well, doesn't that mean that you would automatically be enlightened at the point of death because the mind of clear light would manifest? And I think the response that I'm trying to remember who it was, said is that at that point, it's a nangla manyebe lo. It's an awareness to which the object appears but is not ascertained.
Yeah. So when we talk about
has the object, right?
We talk about, so there is an object. Well, let's say though in the black near attainment, at the end of the black near attainment, when you fall into a state that's like fainting, it said, it may not be a recognizable object. But the thing about the clear light of death, that's what we call the mother clear light, right?
Right.
What we try to practice in Tantra, highest yoga Tantra, is to be able to have to induce through the various stages of the death evolution a remembering consciousness of emptiness, so that when that clear light of death appears, it appears to be inherently existent, but it appears as as total vacuity, and that can induce the remembering consciousness of the meaning of emptiness, the sun clear light, S-O-N, not S-U-N. Diana, do you have a thought? You're just saying goodbye?
I would not interrupt the class to say that, but I will be saying goodbye.
Okay.
I wanted to say that the neurology of sleep now talks about processes that can only occur in deep sleep, and one of them is the glymphatic system, in which the brain essentially clears out that which is detritus and is able therefore to distinguish at some level between what is detritus to be removed and what needs to be kept. I do not know if you would call that consciousness, but it's certainly
So hold on. So Louise is sort of not sure what detritus means.
I don't know. I see it. Sorry.
Like junk, broken
Junk.
stuff that you want to toss out.
Right. Okay. So there's some stuff to think about there.
I mean, there's discernment. I don't know if discernment is the same as consciousness.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on, Venerable. Let me just read a little bit further here. Since there is no foundation consciousness separate from the mental consciousness, according to Nagarjuna, what is called foundation consciousness in his commentary on the awakening mind, Bodhicitta Vivarana, that refers in general to the mind characterized by mere awareness and luminosity. So when Nagarjuna is referring to alaya vijnana as though something that's existing, it's not talking about a foundation consciousness the way that a sangha thinks of it, as being the repository of the seeds and so forth, but it is just talking about mind characterized by mere awareness and luminosity. So when we talk about selshing, what do we call? The definition of mind is that which is what?
Well,
Again, Mikhail? Shell.
Selshing Rikpa, clear and knowing.
Shell still. She sells. So sell shing rikpa. So when we talk about in our morning meditation, in our meditations, also that which is clear in knowing. So the clarity refers to the conventional or ultimate clear light nature. Rikpa refers to its function of knowing. Okay, so it refers in general to the mind characterized by mere awareness and luminosity. Awareness means, selshing rikpa, and more specifically to mental consciousness. That's what Nagarjuna is referring to when he says alaya vijnana. He's referring to mental consciousness. The reasons are that the context here is a response that demonstrates the causal efficacy, that causal efficacy remains tenable despite the mind's general lack of intrinsic existence. The reasons are that the context here is a response that demonstrates that causal efficacy remains tenable despite the mind's general lack of intrinsic existence. So he's talking about just the quality of being clear and knowing is sufficient to explain the causal efficacy. That means that the mind can act and can change and can give rise to the or to be a repository for the karmic seeds and so forth. It demonstrates, number two, that it is a mental consciousness that assumes birth and cyclic existence. And three, that it is mental consciousness that is the basis of all classes of phenomena, both afflicted and enlightened. So then, okay. So then the literal truth of the teaching of foundation consciousness is rejected also in Bhava Viveka's essence of the middle way. What is that? Uma Ningpo, right? by Baba Viveka. Who is Baba Viveka? Oh, KT is here. KT, have you been here all along? I didn't notice you.
No, I slid in. Thank you so much. I got caught up in some family things. I'm so sorry I'm late,
No
but
problem.
trying to get here and be here as
No
I can.
problem. No problem. So who is Baba Viveka, KT?
One of the Nalanda masters who liked to debate with Buddha Palita. Buddha Palita.
Yeah, they had their controversy, right? We've
Yes.
quoted, but Baba Viveka was a great master, and his texts are generally, when talking about many of the stages of the path, are considered to be authoritative. So in his Essence of the Middle Way, he also rejects the literal teaching of foundation consciousness, meaning that foundation consciousness is the repository of the seeds that ripen and giving to this duality of subject and object and so forth. Similarly, given that he accepts external reality, the master Gyanagarbha also does not accept foundation consciousness. There also seems to be two camps within the Chittamatra, two camps, which reject external reality. Two camps within the Chittamatra which rejects. Two camps that reject, right? It should be singular there. Anyway, there also seem to be two camps within the Chittamatra which reject external reality. One that asserts foundation consciousness, and another that does not. So which camp in the Chittamatra? Oh, that rejects external reality. So Asangas, the followers of Asanga, the Chittamatrans who follow Asanga, they reject external reality because they're talking about alaya vijnana. But there are also other Chittamatrans within that school, followers of reasoning, that also reject external. Some of them reject external reality. Is that right? Two camps within Chittamatra which reject external reality, right? Even the master Kamala Shila, who does not accept external reality, writes, mental consciousness alone is endowed with the potency to connect with another life. He then goes on to cite the following from Vasubandhu's Treasury of Abhidharma. This is where we're going to stop right here. So Jimpa's translation of this verse, severing, reconnecting, being freed from attachment, degenerating, transitioning through death, being born, these we maintain to be mental consciousness alone. So this is supposedly saying that, you don't, for the transitioning to another life, you don't need a alaya vijnana. They're all mental consciousness. This verse, let me get it here. There we go. This is translated by what's his name? Pruden. What was Pruden's name? Do you know? Mikhail, do you have Pruden's translations of Abhidharmakosha, Basham? Anyway, there's an author name, I can't remember his first name. Leo Pruden came out with 3 or 4 volumes of translation. Actually, he didn't translate the Abhidharmakosha or its Basham. What did he translate? Do you know?
He translated Delavalle Poussin's French translation.
He translated the French translation. It almost sounded like he was translating it himself from Sanskrit or Tibetan. Although apparently he did like the Tibetan translation. He did know some of the Tibetan. So in his translation, he says, as a prelude to this is the first 3 lines of verse 42 in, I think, the 3rd chapter of Abhidharmakosha, which is talking about beings, about people and so forth. So he says, we have seen this is a little prelude to that commentary. This is from the Bhasham. We have seen what the pratitya samutpada of beings is, the dependent arising of beings is, and how beings last. We have seen also how death results from the exhaustion of life force, ayus, etc. It remains for us to say which consciousness is present at the moments of death and birth. So the relevance here is that the Yogacaras are saying that the alaya vijnana is present at the time of birth and death. That's what connects. So this verse 42a to c, the first 3 lines of it, breaking, taking up again, detachment, loss of detachment, death and birth are regarded as proper to the mind consciousness, the mental consciousness. So that's similar. In the translation, if you happen to have the translation in the Wisdom series by, what's his name? The text by Chim Jampayang, the famous Sakya scholar, very detailed commentary on the Abhidharma Kosha. Was it do you remember, Paul, the translation?
Champa Yingyan? Yeah.
Champa Yingyan, I can't remember what his Western name is. He was one of my fellow monks at Sarah. He was, from Australia. So he translated the Chin Jampayang. So he has that verse 342, chapter 3, verse 42, severing, linking, free from attachment, degeneration, death, and rebirth are asserted to be mental consciousness alone. And anyway, there's more detail that we can go into on another occasion. I just wanted to mention that for our next class. So I mentioned there'll be no discussion on Monday. I have a doctor's appointment, but for our next class, I wonder if Doris, could you put up the PDF is already there?
No, I'll do that now.
There's a PDF so we're going to come up in a couple of stanzas from a section that says the way the Buddha engaged with conventional truths in consonance with the world is extensively presented in the following stanzas from a sutra belonging to the early Buddhist Purva Shaila sect. This is from Thupten Jinpa's translation, a couple pages further on, and this is a sutra that has not been translated very extensively in English. The 84,000 Translation Project doesn't have it yet, but there is a translation that I was able to find, first of all, from the Chinese, and then Paul had previously put up also what was it, Paul?
Oh, Paul Harrison's article about the Sanskrit fragments.
Right. So those are from that same sutra. So you can take a look at that. So we will have that. We'll present it in our next class next week also. So I'm hoping that you were not too confused by what we were talking about today. Basic point is that the alaya vijnana was not meant to be as it could be literally taken in the Chittamatra, the sutras that the Chittamatra rely upon. Although it literally says that it's a repository for the seeds and so forth, it's actually, that's just sort of like a provisional meaning of it for people that were in need of that. The actual meaning of teaching it was talking about the emptiness of the mind itself and so forth. Suvansh, do you have a question or a thought? Comment?
Venerable George, a quick one over here. So, yes, we've been going through and we've been, he's brought up many points saying why foundational consciousness was taught. But he's ending on a note over here to say that what proceeds from life to life is a mental consciousness. So I'm curious to know if, since a mental consciousness does go from life to life, does it have intrinsic reality?
You have doubt? No. Does anything have intrinsic reality? Does anything have inherent existence?
No, I mean the teaching is that nothing, from form all the way to Buddha nature, everything is empty.
Yes, right. I agree.
But
Ben?
I'm just curious here. What's the implication that a mental consciousness does go from life to life?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we would say so from the sutra tradition, they say when they get down to it, they say there's no need for alaya vijnana because there is a subtle mental consciousness that continues. From the tantric point of view, that is not necessarily referring to the subtlemost mind, but other than the subtlemost mind that continues from beginningless time, till the end, that subtlemost mind, other than that, there is not another subtle mental consciousness that continues. So those that talk about a mental consciousness that continues in the sutra tradition, as opposed to tantra, I don't see what subtle mental consciousness they're talking about there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Doris.
Thank you, Venerable. After class last week, you prepared 2 PDFs for the class.
Right.
You didn't mention those. Do you
Oh,
want
yeah.
to make comment about those?
Yeah. So I can't comment this Monday because there will be no discussion group this Monday. But I think I did refer to them in passing. If you have questions about them, you can send me. Mikhail and some of you have been good in emailing me or sending me messages when you had questions. If those 2 PDFs, I think also you kindly sent them out in an email to people, right, Doris? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I did.
So you'll have those. So those were just the previous stanza that was in question. Okay. Before we end, how are we doing? Anyone have any discernible something that you can enunciate? I'm sure you have some doubts that you can't quite enunciate. Jeremy, what do you think?
Can I just ask one question from something that we covered last week session?
Yes. Yes.
It might be a little off the topic, but it was the question came from Mikhail about the famous bowl of water that is seen by different beings in different ways. The
Right.
gods see it as nectar, etc.
Right.
And his question was, how does the Buddha see that bowl? And I think your answer was that the perfect seeing is not seeing, which means that the Buddha only sees the bowl in the way that various sentient beings see the bowl. I think that was your
So
response.
there are two things from the perspective of the Buddhist omniscient mind realizing emptiness, ultimate truth. There's no bowl, there's no water, there's nothing there at all, right? He just sees the emptiness of that. Although the referent object is is that water. That's the referent object. Same thing when you realize, when you meditate on emptiness, it always has to be the emptiness of something, right? You can't just have there's the emptiness of the mug, when you perceive the emptiness of the mug is not appearing. You just perceive its ultimate nature, emptiness. But from the perspective of the Buddha's omniscient mind, realizing the diversity of phenomena, that means conventional phenomena, knowing the minds of sentient beings, the Buddha knows how that dependent arising appears to pretas, how it appears to animals, how it appears to humans, and so forth, and devas. So the Buddha does know how it appears, but those appearances have no reality. Those are falsities, right? So the Buddha only knows them in dependence on knowing the minds of beings who are still under the influence of ignorance, ordinary sentient beings. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But then later in that same session, there was in the text it mentioned that something like conjecture about karma, cause and effect, is discouraged because I think the idea is that sentient beings can't understand the complexity of karma. I think it was talking about how only the Buddha can see the subtle dependent arising across many eons. And so that seemed to imply that there are some conventionalities that only the Buddha sees, and sentient beings don't see them. So those two positions seem to be a bit contradictory to me.
Right. So your thought is that if sentient beings don't perceive those conventionalities, then how could the Buddha perceive those conventionalities? Because the Buddha only perceives conventionalities in dependence on knowing the minds of sentient beings, right?
Yeah, that was my thought. Yeah, that was my question.
Good question. What do you think, Mikhail? You're okay.
Yeah, no. I just we are puzzling in our little group about this, and we are unable to make a final decision.
Okay, that's good. Paul, do you have a thought? Oh, wait. Suvansh has a thought he wants to share.
Venerable George, on this note, didn't the Buddha go into the forest and he picked up some leaves? And he says, "This is all that I teach, but what I know is much more."
Yeah, that's right. So
So in other words, he knows, he may know conventionalities, or he may know the nature of reality, but in order to communicate it to ordinary sentient beings, he may not be doing so, or he says he's not doing so.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's completely relevant here, although it's tangentially connected. Paul, what do you think? The Buddha, say the subtle conventional qualities of the Buddha, or subtle conventionalities that are not perceived by sentient beings. How could the Buddha know those?
I know that this is answered in many different ways depending on the tenet system. So obviously in Abhidharma, they maintain that objects exist in the past, the present, and the future. That's the sarva asti, right? That all objects exist, and that's across time. So on the simple level with the Vaibhashikas, that's the answer.
Well, let's try Prasangika.
Prasangika, I'm trying to remember, because it's related to that question of if there's a glass of water, right? And a human sees water, a god sees nectar, and a hungry ghost sees pus and blood. What is it conventionally? And I seem to remember the answer is it's water, because that is the result of the dependent arising, that the god and the hungry ghost have defective sense faculties.
Okay, so in K-Drup J's Dose of Emptiness,
right,
which was translated by Jose Cabazon, it addresses this question, and K-Drup J explains that the pretas perceive a portion of the dependent arising, and the gods perceive a different portion, sort of like a Venn diagram. They're not overlapping. Maybe they overlap only in the sense that there's some kind of liquid there, even though
Right.
it's pus and blood and liquid, or
Right.
humans perceive water. But generally, there's no contradiction between them, that they all are pramana. They are all valid cognitions according to their portion of the dependent arising that actually appears to them, right? Because according to the dependent arising that's existing right now here outside my window, I see the trees that way. Remember in the discussion group before, I was pointing out trees that way because I'm downstairs. So depending on my karma, it depends upon my karma how this dependent arising appears to me. So how the dependent arising of the water or the liquid, whatever you want to call it, appears to a preta may be different because their karma is different than the human and the animal and so forth and so on.
Now, I think this is a debate between Jamyang Sheba and Jangya Ropé Dorje, where I think Jamyang Sheba says that, yeah, it's all three, and Jangya is the one who says, no, it's just water.
I see. Okay, I'll have to check in Jangya's text. So the question about the subtle, that Jeremy brought up, the subtle conventional nature phenomena that are not within the domain of non-omniscient beings. So ordinary beings who are not yet Buddhas can't perceive the subtle qualities of the Buddha. So when we talk about those subtle qualities, they have to have a conventional nature, right? They can't be just emptiness, because emptiness is just that the lack of inherent existence. It has to have a basis. So how would the Buddha know those conventional qualities? So this is a good question. So for you to think about, we'll discuss that and some of these other lingering questions. Also the PDFs that Doris reminded that we gave out last class that we didn't seem to address yet. We'll try to address those in the next class. Okay.
Yeah, our text repeatedly, I mean, I think says that the Buddhas see the diversity of phenomena.
Okay, it was a little bit garbled from my side here. I couldn't quite hear what you said, Mikhail. Could you say once again?
Our text really says that the Buddhas can see the variety without adding through others' mind.
Where does it say that?
Well, I'll find it.
No, remember we went through this anyway. Yeah, if you can find a place where it says without relying on sentient beings.
No. It is not saying without relying, but there is no mention of that.
Right, but yeah, the Buddha does know the varieties of phenomena, but when it gets down, how does he know? How does the omniscient mind know? Without using a gender there, how does the omniscient mind know? By knowing the minds of sentient beings. Because conventionalities are falsities, right? They appear to be inherently existent and are lacking inherent existence. That depends on the karma of ordinary sentient beings. Okay, so really good questions. Let's leave it there. We'll continue next Saturday, inshallah. Let's try to dedicate the virtues that we've created. Virtues, both the collection of wisdom and the collection of merit, are both virtuous. Due to these virtues, Gewadi, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead, as a result of that, lead all migrators without exception into that very same state. May the supreme jewel, precious bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. and for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Khyentse Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, together with your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow here and now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings and for the welfare of mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. You passed away, at which point I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the Triple Gem and the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And finally, request to our primordial gurus, all of our teachers, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging skillfully, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, I make this request. Please live long and stable lives. Okay, a lot to chew on and a lot of mind training to be doing in the these days with the political situations, concentration camps. What was it called? Alligator concentration camp in Florida or something like this.
Alcatraz.
Alligator Alcatraz. So much grist for the mill of your mind training, and also just in the level of watching your minds, not to be like those two boys who were caught up in fascination with the icky picky happiness of the chiclets underneath the sofa, but to recognize this great feast of Dharma that we can be ingesting and becoming better people because of it. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Again, no discussion group this Monday, unfortunately. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Venerable